You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. The White Sox doing something right here at the beginning of spring training that I predicted. And it might lead to something else that I predicted was possible just a few weeks ago on Sox in the Basement. The first thing that's actually happening is they are gathering up some names that you recognize and filling in some gaps because the music has stopped and some of these players can't find a chair. And remember, I went through that a few months ago. That's what this team was going to be. They were going to add more players at the end when the music stops and spring training is here and there aren't enough chairs and players are like, I need a place to play. And that's where Michael A. Taylor comes from. Even though it's a major league deal, it's not for a lot of money. That's the best you could get to go to the worst team in baseball in the middle of a rebuild at this point of his career. So he's a guy where the music stopped and this was the only chair. And Joey Gallo, wow, have you fallen off? Minor league deal accepted now. He's also in the mix as a non-roster invitee. And what they've done is they've increased the depth in the outfield. And so I want to go over that today and what it could mean for another move that might be coming that I predicted a couple weeks ago. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. I mean, just like you, I'm sitting here looking at spring training, wondering what it is exactly that we're looking at. You know, I mean, where does Michael A. Taylor fit into things when you have an Austin Slater already as your fourth outfielder and your top free agent target, when you have Mike Tauchman, who's supposed to be the guy that's going to step in and be your leadoff hitter and solidify right field, at least until somebody else steps up and takes it, when you have Andrew Benintendi out there, when you have Luis Robert Jr. out there, is Taylor here because you expect either Benintendi or Robert to be moved?
Well, I think that's a possibility. I mean, Taylor becomes the center fielder the moment that Robert is moved, and maybe they're backing up their outfield for the possibility of one, because that's the other prediction I made, that he's going to get into spring training, look good, and somebody's going to pull the trigger. Like, I've seen some buzz around the Blue Jays, I've seen some buzz around the Pirates, and I've seen the buzz around the Pirates, and then it went away, and then it came back again. And he makes an awful lot of sense for them. And they have prospects that we would be interested in. And they've even kind of floated out there, their big move hasn't happened yet. And I'm really looking at Pittsburgh as a possibility with Luis Robert Jr. among other places. But I think he's going to move. But as it's constructed right now, Taylor isn't even the fourth outfielder. Like you said, number one target of the offseason. We're going to make that joke all year long. Austin Slater, whereas he doesn't play every day, with the exception of last year, has put up some pretty good numbers at the plate when he's out there. He's kind of a platoon guy, but he's been an effective guy at the plate who can go out and field his position. I still rank him ahead of Taylor unless Robert leaves. Then Taylor somehow would jump from being the fifth outfielder to the center fielder because of his defense. It won't be because of his bat. What did he hit? Under 200? Another under? Both Joey Gallo and Michael A. Taylor. If you're an old school baseball fan, if you're my dad, don't look at his batting average.
No.
Because Taylor last year in his year 33 season, in 2024 for the Pirates, hit 193 with a 253 on base percentage for a 543 OPS. Brutal. He was still worth a win above replacement, though, because of the defense. And in the years beforehand, he's been slightly below average at the plate in terms of his OPS and his production, but he earns 2-3 wins above replacement, B-WAR, baseball reference WAR, every year because of the defense. Joey Gallo has not been good since 2021. That is the truth. Joey Gallo has not been an effective player since 2021. And that's when he leaves Texas. And while he's with Texas, he's got an OPS over 800 because he's hitting bombs. And it doesn't matter if his average is in the low 200s to the high 100s. Like, if you look at the year that he goes to the All-Star game, and that's 21. His first half with Texas is good. His second half with New York is bad. That first half, though, got him into the All-Star game. He finished the season at 199. with an 808 OPS. It's the home runs and it's getting on base. He got on base that year at a 351 clip, and going into the All-Star game, he was almost at 380, his on-base percentage. What's changed with him is he doesn't get on base anymore. He's not drawing walks. Something has changed at the plate with him. It's a lack of power, but it's also he's not getting on base. So his OPS now is slid off to being below average, and he's hitting between 150 and 170. So he is not a guy that's making this team. I know a lot of people see the name like, oh, Joey Gallo, put him out right field. He's going to hit 40 bombs. He's not. He's not going to hit 40 bombs. I would not even expect him to make this team. He is an interesting name that comes in that maybe they can fix something in him. Like, hey, Joey, take more pitches and just swing for the fences. Like, close your eyes and just swing for it. And maybe they find something out of there, but they've got enough guys like that they could probably bring up from the minor leagues that could probably do something like that. So I don't get the Gallo signing except for depth.
Yeah, I think it's really just lightning in a bottle, right? If Joey Gallo comes back to what he was with the Rangers, and maybe, again, this is maybe just a Will Venable thing where it's like, I always liked Joey.
Right, that's what it feels like. Like, Will Venable's like, can we had Joey Gallo? Why? Him and Martin Perez are a lot of fun.
Yeah. I like Joey Gallo. I mean, Joey Gallo is like, he was, at least at the time, one of the best defensive outfielders. I mean, a cannon for an arm and everything like that. So there's talent there, but the fact is that Gallo's batting metrics were always just poor. He's just a home run hitter. He's one of those 3 true outcome guys, but one of the true outcomes disappeared. Like you said, he's not taking walks. He just started striking out and occasionally hitting bombs.
As a baseball fan, I never liked Joey Gallo because I don't like the 3 true outcome guys. I don't like somebody who can't hit the baseball on a regular basis. Like can't have a batting average that makes sense. Like, I get that the guy hits bombs, but, that guy's also going to go 0 for 4 a lot. That guy's going to crush you so many times. He's going to have his moments. He's going to crush you so many times. Like, a guy like that, he should be hitting like 6th or 7th in your order maybe because you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle in the middle of a game. And guys like that get used further up in the order than they should be. It hurts my love of baseball to have a team that relies on a guy like Joey Gallo. And it's predictable that he falls off, right? It's as predictable as eventually Tim Anderson was going to fall off when you looked at all of those metrics that showed that he was very lucky and the ball was falling just in the perfect place a lot of times. And eventually that luck runs out as your career goes on. The law of averages catches up with you. The law of averages caught up with Joey Gallo.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not really a guy that I'm even all that worried about or interested in. He's just one of those names that also, he was a guy that a couple of years ago, everyone was like, oh, Joey Gallo, get him on the White Sox. Joey Gallo, we need Joey Gallo. And
Michael A. Taylor too. How many times did we have discussions when they were in contention and we were trying to build a team in the off season that was going to go out and actually win a division? Did we say names like Michael A. Taylor and Joey Gallo? Like there's flashes of Kenny Williams finally getting his guy here, but this is not Kenny Williams, and that's not the reason these guys were brought in. Gallo's brought in because I think of comfort, you're right, with Venable, and the idea that there might be something we could unlock in him, lightning in a bottle, it's a minor league deal. Can we just add this guy to the roster? That's all he is. And Taylor at this point is a defensive outfielder that adds depth at a low cost, who's a veteran player, who with his defense is going to be worth more than a replacement level player, even if he doesn't hit very well, and can slide into center field if you trade Luis Robert Jr. And that's why Michael A. Taylor's on the team. That's the explanation for both of those players. Otherwise, I wouldn't get very excited about them in terms of making the roster as everyday players. I still think your outfield as it stands is Robert Jr., Benintendi, Tauchman, and Austin Slater is going to play a lot. He's going to be the 4th outfielder. And Michael A. Taylor now is a 5th outfielder. And you may be carrying both of them, but Taylor can run, if I'm not mistaken, and play really good defense. So you may carry 2 outfielders on your bench going into the season. It's a possibility. And if they do that, great. And if Robert Jr. gets traded, which I think is eventually going to happen, Taylor will be out there a lot in the outfield. And you're going to be frustrated with the lack of hitting, but he's going to play good defense. And when you look at it at the end of the year, you're going to be like, well, he was at least a professional baseball player who didn't hurt your team and helped your pitchers out. Sox in the Basement listeners, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. 'Tis the season coming up here. With spring around the corner, you want to refresh the house, get in there and see them today a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street, where an owner is in showroom, and then there'll be one on site to answer all your questions and make sure it's done correctly. All Window and Door Superstore installers, they don't farm out the work. They've been doing it this way in Oak Forest since 1985 with all major brands, custom made, no stock items. That way you get a perfect fit. Do it right. Make sure it's being done by an expert and somebody that is right here on the South Side and has a long history of doing great work for Southsiders. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. Let's talk a little bit about the coverage early on of spring training for the White Sox, because it's really obvious that everybody's jumping on to the big name prospects that are high up on the prospect list. Like, I'm seeing a lot of Braden Montgomery and Colson Montgomery. I'm seeing a lot of Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith. I'm seeing a lot of quotes from these guys and a lot of talk about these guys. You're going to get a lot of Edgar Caro and a lot of Kyle Teal. And those 6 guys right there, yes, they are the most hype-filled players that we have on the team. They are the future. They are the core. They are the guys that you're excited about. And if you get 3 of them to turn out to be pretty good baseball players or high-end players on your team, you should be excited. Because remember, a couple years back, it was Yoan Moncada, Michael Kopech, and Lucas Giolito, and also Mike Adolfo, and a couple other names that I can't even remember that I know were on those lists. Like, there were a lot of names. It was like, this guy's going to be good, like Nick Madrigal. All these guys are going to work out, and they don't all work out, and they don't all stay healthy. And not every prospect pans out no matter where they're ranked on a list. So I am interested in how Colson Montgomery performs, right? I won't worry about Braden Montgomery until he's played a minor league season. I can look at it at the end of the year and say, how did he do in year 1? I'm curious how Kyle Teal does, but mostly how he does in the minors as he starts to get ready to make the jump to the majors. I'm curious if Edgar Caro can make this team or how soon he can be here and how they will use him. And I know Hagen Smith has a lot of hype, but I don't know how quickly they're going to get him to the majors. And I already heard that Noah Schultz, the concentration is more on him pitching every 5th day in the minors, not getting him in here to the majors. So you might see him at the end of the year, and that might be the most you can hope for. So while all these guys are exciting that they're talking about, the thing I'm most interested about in spring training is the names that are not on those lists. Are they going to make a jump? Is somebody going to surprise? Is somebody that was on this team last year going to turn it around? Is a young player that was on this team last year going to figure it out? That's the big story. I know it's not what everybody wants to talk about, because you don't want to sit there and talk about can Miguel Vargas figure it out, because I think most of us feel like he can't. But it is the story. Can Lenin Sosa, even though he's bad at defense, become a bat that's good enough that you're going to use it every once in a while, use it most of the time? Is it going to translate into him becoming an everyday player or even making this team, or will he not? Chase Mydroth, who's not at the top of the list of the return for Garrett Crochet, is ready to be a Major League Baseball player if you look at his stats. Can he translate the fact that he's a very hard out in the minors to become a very hard out in the majors? And will we find a guy that is a second baseman? Because that's what he's projected to be, even though he played mostly short. Will we find a guy that's going to be a second baseman for now and for the future? Those are the stories I'm more interested in, Ed. Like, is there somebody who didn't work out last year but has potential, or somebody that's been brought in, or somebody that's been in the minors working their way up, that I'm going to see something new from here in spring and possibly at the beginning of the season that's going to make me excited? Because those other names to me just remind me of that list from a few years ago, where I know some of them will work out, some of them will not, and I know they're good, but you could do 100 interviews with them, and all they're going to do is say the right thing, and you're going to get all excited about them, but until they go out there on the field and do anything, it doesn't really matter. I'm more curious about the guys that we aren't talking about.
Well, and that's the story, right? And that has to be the story for this entirety of spring is, where are you going to find talent if you're the Chicago White Sox? Because you don't have enough time to build up by 1st and 2nd round picks alone. Okay, you've got some guys that are on their way up, but you don't have enough time to sit there and say, okay, we're going to make a huge splash in the draft. free agency might not be the way you're ever able to go because Jerry Reinsdorf won't spend the money, because we're not going to go out and watch a terrible product. So he's not going to spend the money to make a better product for us to go out and watch. It's that vicious circle where the snake is eating its own tail. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to sit there and do what good, solid organizations do, which is find talent in the unlikeliest of places. Find talent in guys that are hustle guys that learned from what they did in college to what they're doing in the pros, or what they did in high school to what they're doing in the pros, and made a jump. Did something to change their swing to make it more viable for a major league team. Did something to add to their repertoire on the mound so that they're not just a one-trick pony because they can't throw it by everybody at this level. Figure out guys that aren't necessarily God-given talents, but are guys that develop something, that are going to be glue guys and are going to be solid players and are going to be the foundation of your team so that your superstars can eat, right? Because that's still what roster building is all about. You're not going to have 9 all-stars. That was the Kenny Williams-Rick Hahn fallacy, was that we're going to put 9 all-stars out there on the field, and then we're going to have a 10th all-star as our designated hitter. And then our bench is going to be a bunch of all-stars, and our bullpen is going to be a bunch of all-stars. Our entire rotation is going to be dominant. We're going to have 5 Cy Young Award winners, even though they only give out 1 every season. And it was just, everybody was great and going to be a golden god of baseball. No, I want Chase Mydroth to just be
a baseball player,
a really good second baseman, and a really good baseball player. Yes, I just want him to be here for a few years where we sit there and go, well, at least we got that second base thing solved. I mean, Mydroth isn't an all-star, but I'll take him. I'll keep him. I like watching him.
I'm looking for guys that are going to come out every day and they got a baseball body that's not going to break down on them. I'm going to keep going back to this all year long. You have too many guys on this team over the last couple of years that are being bodybuilders instead of baseball players. Like, I want to see baseball players out there. I want to see guys that hustle for the extra out, that are doing everything they possibly can out there to win every individual contest, let alone game. Like, they have added a guy. Like, I really did like the addition of Michael A. Taylor, because that is a guy who's a perfect example of, even if he's not doing well at the plate, finds a way to help you win. That's going to be a positive influence on your team. You need guys like that around. Okay. But what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for those names that I'm not expecting. It's exciting to read about those names that I mentioned at the beginning, right? Your Kyle Teals, your Colson Montgomerys, your Edgar Carrows, your Hagen Smiths, and etc. Like, it's exciting to read those stories because they have the most potential. Anybody that's watched this team, though, anybody who's watched baseball long enough knows not every one of those prospects is going to work out. They're not. Mark it down right now. Of those 6 guys, you're lucky to get 3 of them to be high-end players. Of those 6, even at this point. I don't care how hyped you are about them. This is how prospects work. The jump from AAA to the majors is really hard. And not even all of them are in AAA at this point. Like, there's a lot that can happen. We watched it. We just experienced this. So while those guys are exciting, and I know that they're the easy thing, right? I mean, like, if you're down there and you're covering this, and you're down at spring, well, who do you want to talk to? The guys on that list. The story, though, is, who's going to come out that I didn't see coming? Who are they going to develop? Who's going to be that ball player I didn't expect? That's the story of spring training for me, and whether or not they move Luis Robert Jr., which I think that they will. It can be fun, though, and this is the part that I'm actually excited about, right? I always liked spring training better, and maybe this is just me being weird about it, but as a baseball fan, I always liked spring training better when I felt like I was looking for that underdog guy to come out and make the team and establish himself, right? Those are the guys I want to get behind. And as much as I would love to see Edgar Carrow and Kyle Teal find a way to make this roster and, supplant Corey Lee as the catcher, or, Andrew Vaughn as the first baseman, or one of them serve as a DH. Not that I'm interested in seeing Kyle Teal take batting practice naked, but, just having a character like that on the team would be a nice change. I'm really more excited about the idea of watching someone come in and do something that is unexpected and be a guy that you sit there and you go, yes, I love it. I love seeing this guy make it because he wasn't expected to. And I love seeing this happen, this Cinderella story, if you want to call it that, or just a guy absolutely get there and claim a spot on a lousy team to sit there and say, look, now somebody knocked me off of this thing, and I dare you, top prospects,
higher, rated prospects, come and get me, because I don't want to see Miguel Vargas fail, but I really don't necessarily care to see that, his success story won't inspire me, right? It's one of those where, like, I expect him to live up to his prospect standing, especially because Chris Getz traded for him. I expect that Colson Montgomery is going to come in and live up to the hype that we've been fed about this guy.
You expect these things? You expect these things. I don't expect these things.
If it happens, then it was supposed to happen.
I'm sorry. Those would be surprising. If Miguel Vargas comes in and he's good, I would be shocked. That's going to be the story of spring training to me. I mean, like, where did this guy come from? Because he was terrible. If Colson Montgomery comes in and he's Corey Seager suddenly after not looking like it for all of last year and starting to get people to change the comp from being Corey Seager to other comps because we're not really into him anymore and he fell off the list. That's the story of spring training. I don't expect any of that.
You're confusing what I'm saying with I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Versus it was expected to happen. Okay. Colson Montgomery was expected to be Corey Seager and live up to the hype. Miguel Vargas is expected to be a good player.
That makes more sense.
It should not surprise us, even though it's going to surprise us because both of them have basically shown that they can suck harder than a Dyson.
Music means only one thing. The Sox nerd Dave Marin is back on Sox in the Basement, as he is each and every week. He puts all those nuggets and trivia tidbits up on the scoreboard at the rate, and he's here brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and see the brand new Lamont Unlocked podcast with yours truly on there and a cast of characters as we explore Lamont. See it all at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Chris, let's continue to get me ready for the season, shall we? Last week, it was Josh Rojas. This week, let's take a look at Austin Slater. The Jacksonville, Florida native became the Sox' first noteworthy pickup of the offseason when he was signed as a free agent on November 20th. While primarily an outfielder, like Rojas, Slater has played all over the diamond. The only places he has not appeared are shortstop and DH. The 32-year-old right-handed hitter has played the most games, 233, in center, which should come in handy if Luis Robert Jr. is traded. You know what else Slater does well? Pinch hit. Slater owns 8 pinch home runs since 2019, which is the most in the bigs in that time frame. Slater used 118 pinch appearances to hit those dingers. By comparison, it took Jerry Hairston 8 years and 429 pinch appearances to hit that many home runs, which is the Sox all-time record. While he is no Tim Anderson from 2016 to 2022, Slater is not bad leading off games. He slashes .264, .373, and .410 with 3 homers in that situation. Slater has made 169 starts in the top spot, the most of any spot in the order, and he hits .249 with a .340 OBP and 18 homers in that role. The Stanford product is really good against Cleveland, hitting .444 in 9 games, and he performs way better against lefties than righties. His career slash line against southpaws is .271, .364, .429, while that sinks to .229, .316, and .333 off righties. Speaking of lefties, the pitcher who Slater has hit the most homers off of is the great Clayton Kershaw at 3. Hey, how about a nugget on the Sox' latest pickups, Michael A. Taylor and Joey Gallo? Taylor joins the White Sox' Jeff Blum, the Yankees' Jim Mason, and the Red Sox' Bobby Kilty as the only players to homer in their only World Series at-bats. Gallo homered in his first big league at-bat. That came off the Sox' Jeff Samardzija in Texas on July 2nd, 2015. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. Did you know the only native of Illinois to play for the 2005 Sox was Belleville's Neil Kotz, who was also the only reliever the Sox used in the ALCS that season? That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Slater, Robert, Hairston, and Clayton Kershaw.
make sense of this to me, Ed. And nobody else is going to talk about this except for me. It boggles my mind, but it's like one of those things nobody else cares about. You're a general manager of a Major League Baseball team, right? We've all had a fantasy baseball team, fantasy football team. You know, we've had to deal with injury lists. Like, we've all done something. We played video games before. You know, we every one of us at some point has had to make a decision similar to this. It's a simple decision, right? You need to make room on your 40-man roster because you have signed a new player. Michael A. Taylor gets signed to a major league contract on the 11th of February. So somebody must be moved off of the 40-man roster to make room for him. Now you have two guys that are injured and that are on the 40-man. And you can move one of them to the 60-day IL, which means they're going to be on the injured list now for 60 days, and they're unavailable. But you can get them cleared off, and you can have room on your 40-man roster. Your two options are Kai Busch and Jesse Schultens. Now, the confusing thing to me is that Jesse Schultens had Tommy John surgery last year, March 1st of 2024. So you would assume he's much closer to coming back to the majors than Kai Busch, who just had it a couple days ago, right? So if you're presented with that, and I don't know what their medical reports are, and this is what boggles my mind sometimes. Would you put Kai Busch on the 60-day IL, because you know he's going to be on there a lot longer, or would you put Jesse Schultens, who's a year removed from the surgery, on the 60-day IL? Because they put Jesse Schultens on it to make room. And I just would love to ask a general manager why. Like, I know it doesn't matter. Schultens probably isn't going to be ready for a while, but like, the logical person in me goes, put the guy on that I know is going to be out for well over a year, right? Like, why make the weird move? Like, if you have to clear Kai Busch off your roster at some point anyway, put him on the 60-day IL. Why not put the guy that just had the surgery on? You think he's going to recover in the next month? Am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts. I didn't understand that either. I mean, you wonder if the only thing that I can't even.
It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Like, look, I'm sure they have a medical report that says Jesse Schultens won't be back for a certain amount of time, or he's not in their plans, right? So it doesn't really matter, right? But wouldn't logic tell you that if you had to put a guy on a 60-day IL, you would put the guy that just had Tommy John surgery on there? I'm looking for red flags in my front office. I think that's what I'm doing, Ed. I'm looking for red flags in my front office. Like when you date, right? And you're going out with a girl, and it might be going wonderful, and then something happens and you go, ooh, that's a red flag, right? But I like her, so I'm going to hang in there. Ooh, there it is again. I'm doing that with the front office right now. I'm doing the exact same thing. Ooh, there's a red flag. Ooh, there's a red flag.
Yeah, it's the same kind of a thing, and we're programmed to do that because our front offices with the Chicago White Sox have been nothing but red flags for a long time, really.
Right. That's the only way I can compare it, right? Like, I've been burned so much in past relationships with White Sox front offices that now I'm looking at this one and I'm going, ooh, can I live with that? No. Like, this illogical move will come back later on in a much worse form. Like, it's the trauma, it's the scar, it's the scab. It's from dealing with the White Sox over all these years. What other fan in the world would get upset and talk for 5-6 minutes about a 60-day IL move?
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.